So the first question is, do you remember the first cabaret you ever went to?
I remember that when I was a kid, there was always there were cabaret on television on every New Year's Eve. You could watch the review. So I discovered cabaret when I was a kid.
Did you ever go to one in person?
And then I went to see cabaret, but when I was in Vegas, during a trip in Vegas. And when we decided to write this series, I went to different cabarets to see and to how it worked, and we went also in backstage to have more ideas.
What was the strangest thing you learned about cabaret?
Well, I think that before working on this subject, I was having a lot of cliché about the cabaret, thinking about, I don't know, drugs, prostitution, a lot of ideas like this. And finally, we realized that it was, comment dire, un univers très bon enfant, enfin très... I mean, it was
very cozy, really.
Yeah, and also, I mean, all the dancers were working a lot and very serious, and we were very far from the first ideas I could have from this subject.
And when you staged your first cabaret show, which I assume is here, what we're seeing, what was the challenge for you?
For what?
For the staging any of the... We saw a couple scenes here, and obviously as the show goes on, and we're going to stay tonight because we're going to show the rest of the... How many episodes?
There's 6 episodes.
Oh, we'll stay for the next 4. But just to see the cabaret. But what was the experience of, suddenly putting on a cabaret show for you?
Well, the thing which was a bit complicated for me when I shot this series is that we were working in a real cabaret called Le Paradis Latin. And I think that we could make this series thanks to them because we had this set to make this series. At first, when we wrote it, we were maybe thinking that we could create a real one in studio, and finally we used the Paradis Latin. So for 2 weeks, the cabaret was closed for us, but we said very long time. So then we had to mix our shooting and representation on night. So we had to finish at 4 because people were coming to repeat and to create the set. Yeah.
Now the first shows we're seeing, I wouldn't say they're the best of a cabaret show. How did you get it so it wasn't as good as it's going to become?
Well, first, thanks to the title of the review, which is Paris 2000, so you really get quickly that it's a bit old and not so good. And yeah, it was complicated even for the choreographer, for the music composer, because we had to find a way to create something which was a bit odd and all square. So, but it was funny for them, and also because they knew that I don't tell you what happening next, but they knew that they could have fun doing this because then they could make something better.
And the chandelier?
Yeah. But I think it's a nice idea. But I mean,
how did that idea emerge? Her wearing the chandelier.
It's an idea of the costume designer, and but I mean,
right.
At the same time,
do you remember as a director, your costume designer coming up to you and say, "What do you think of this?"
Yeah. I definitely remember because at the same time, I really like. I mean, I like to watch that kind of show. I mean, it's also I'm a bit nostalgic of that kind of show and dance, but it's true that it couldn't last, and you have to find new and modern ideas if you want to have some audience.
I was just driving over here. I was listening to the music of Dalida, which I never knew, all the way over. Did you grow up with that music?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, all French people know and love Dalida. Yeah.
And there is a woman who I think it's in the second episode, who is an older woman who tells the story of having been in a show. Lena, I can't remember the name of the character.
Lynn Renaud. Yeah, Lynn Renaud was.
Was she?
Well, she was she's a French singer, actress, and she used to be a very famous meneuse de revue. and she even have the name of a street in Las Vegas because she played in Vegas for a very long time. So there is a Lynn Renault Road in Las Vegas.
And was this an easy casting moment for you? Did you just ask her to do this?
Well, I asked her. We were a bit afraid that she would say no, and finally, this is one of the last scenes we made at the cabaret. I was very happy to be to have her in the show.
And does she tell her own story? Was this something you wrote for her, or
No,
both?
we totally wrote it for her. I think that she loves cabaret, and she would not say that, but she's an actress.
Got it. And speaking of your actors, what's your casting process? It may be different from way we may be casting for a television episode or a pilot here. I don't know if you've done both, but I'm curious, what's the process of finding Alex, and particularly finding Charlotte, who gives, I think, quite an astounding performance as his mom. What's the process of getting your actors to be committed for these shows?
Well, I started with Alex, in fact, with Gaspard, and then I had to find her mother, so it was kind of easy to find these characters. It was more complicated for all the dancers who are supposed to be actresses too, so sometimes they both, and two of them, Justine and Lynette, were dancing at the Paradis Latin, so this is how I found them. And but for example, one of the dancers, Coralie, Salomé de Valls, is just an actress and doesn't dance, so we had to have a
coach. Oh, and a double. We had to have a double.
Yeah, we have to have a double during the dance scene. But I think it was more important to have a very good actress like her.
And in your casting process, if you're meeting somebody the first time, suppose you were casting me as a person to be a moderator, what would be the process of our meeting? What would happen if we met for the first time in your office or whatever? What happens?
Well, for Siri, I really need to already see how you would play one of the scenes we wrote. So I tried to write all the scenes because I was afraid about being tired of the scenes that I would make then. So I write special scenes with the characters just for the casting. And then I think it's like in all other projects, for example, the guy who played the ex-boyfriend of Justine that we see at the very end, it was very clear from the first scene he made that I would choose him.
Got it. And do you, sort of in that casting process on the first meeting, besides doing that scene, will they do it with another actor that you bring in, or who will they read with if they're reading?
It depends on the role. I mean, for example, for Coralie and Jordan, it was very important to see them together because they would make a couple. But sometimes, I mean, it can be very different. But I know that for this series, I knew that I could choose very strong characters. Who, for example, I was very happy to have Galia Salimo, who plays Armande, or Florence Thomasin, also because they used to work in cabaret when they were young. So I thought it was interesting to have people who knew this subject.
And since you're going through 6 episodes, were you able to shoot in sequence? And if not, how did you handle that challenge?
Well, we cross-board all the episodes, so it was, of course, a bit complicated. Had a very good script who was really always next to me because sometimes it was a bit complicated to remember where we were. But no, the real difficulty here for this series, because it was the same way of working than on Call My Agent, is that sometimes we had a lot of scenes with which were very crowded, with a lot of extras because we are in a theater, and sometimes people are talking and behind they're dancing. So this is why it was we had to be very quick with that kind of difficult scenes.
And from the scenes that we just saw, for you, what was the most challenging? Obviously, you said this is challenging, but from the 2 episodes we saw, what was the most challenging scene for you as a director?
I would say one of a scene of when suddenly on the morning we are very in a hurry, and suddenly the actor decides that he doesn't like the scene. It's I mean
Been there.
yeah. No, but I mean it's always we never know which scene will. I mean we can expect some difficult scenes, and finally it's not the complicated scene we have to make. Sometimes it's just a scene between two characters, which is more difficult, and we couldn't expect it.
In developing a visual style for this, what was your process? How did you work with your cinematographer and your production designer to develop the style that this particular series has?
Well, of course, we try to watch some movies about cabaret, but we knew that I think we would make something, I mean, let's say new, because we didn't find any series about cabaret, for example, so I worked again with Antoine Roch. I worked with him on Call My Agent, for example. This is how I met him. And I really liked also to work with this editor I met thanks to Call My Agent. So, I mean, there was music that we already made together and that we wanted to recreate. I'm not saying that we're trying to do the same thing in a cabaret, but the dramedy style was something in the Britain, and it's something we try to keep, and also it's a very choral,
Collaborative?
Like,
I mean,
like
with a lot of characters, a lot of decor. So we know that we have to find a music, a melody that which has to be very.
like a choir? You were saying like a choir.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I'm going to talk about that word that you just used, which is dramedy. And that's a style of performance and a style of a show. And the question is, how natural and believable your actors are creating their characters as versus being a little more extravagant and exaggerated. And it seems to me you go for reality. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I can accept for them to be very extravagant. It depends on the scene, in fact. But I always need to feel that it seems true, and even in that kind of world where you could expect something very unreal, and but I wanted to have like people with extraordinary tasks, let's say, but who are very ordinary in the life.
The woman who has the voice, how she hardly can speak.
Yeah, it's
talk about
Galia,
her.
yes.
How did that
Armand.
evolve? How did that evolve?
Well, she's one of them. She used to work in a cabaret, and I thought, for example, to put her with her voice behind the guichet.
Behind the counter.
Yeah, behind the counter with a glass in front of her was like something I thought funny.
And that voice is hers, or
Yeah, it's a real voice.
Got it. And how did you meet her?
Oh, do I?
How did you meet her? How did you find her?
Because I knew that she used to work, and she used to be a meneuse de revue a long time ago.
Got it. And what's a day like on one of these shoots? We have a certain amount of hours that we work. There's such a thing as French hours, which we've heard about. We don't do that here. I don't know if you did that on this show. And when you first arrive on the set, what happens first?
Well, I like to découper. Je cherche le mot. Oui, I will
Go right ahead, consult with her.
French. Non, en fait, parce que on découpe en amont avec le chef opérateur, et c'est vrai qu'on révise tout ça le matin, donc avec une sorte de petite équipe réduite, et pour parfois complètement tout changer de ce qu'on avait pu imaginer, puisque on avait découpé pas forcément sur le décor, et soudain on se rend compte de toutes les. Donc il y a tout on réenclenche quelque chose en fait dès le matin, quoi.
So we're basically scheduling everything in the morning. We're sort of taking it apart together with the DP and going through all the stages that we will be shooting in. And so it might change completely from what we originally planned to this morning meeting, where we're kind of making a schedule of the entire day.
And
would you rehearse first for what? How would that work?
I don't like to rehearse with actors. I mean, it's more a lot of lectures before, long time before. But No, and also I know that the rhythm of shooting of a series needs to. We have to be very precise from the start. I think that if we rehearse too much, we can have argument. So I'm trying to be very autoritaire.
But does that mean, though, if you're doing a scene, for example, the scene that we had with the head of Perrier and his son in that particular scene, will you immediately set up the scene and start to shoot, or will you rehearse with your actors, allow them to?
Which
This is the scene near the end when the boss of Perrier is saying.
Oh yeah.
Just using that as an example. Will you rehearse that whole scene at least once before you start shooting, or will you get right into it and let's start shooting?
No, I like to go very quickly in the scene, also because I did some lecture with the actors, so they know exactly what they have to express. And I mean, time is so precious during a series, especially I think in France, because we don't have a lot of time. So it's good to make une prise, a shot, and to see how it works, and maybe change stuff later. But I need to have the feelings that I'm shooting very quickly.
And was there an average number of pages that you would actually do every day? How many pages might it be?
Well, for this series, we were about doing like not pages, but we had like around 7-8 minutes a day.
Got it. In the first act that we saw, there's an interesting transition that is, I don't know if you did it again, but it's where the frame suddenly goes and wipes itself up. I don't think you used that again, and I'm curious, where did that one come from in your editing process to decide on that particular shot?
In which scene, sorry?
I think it's when we're meeting the Polish woman. I think she's.
Oh yeah, and when
the camera. I mean, not the camera, but the frame goes and slides up. Where did that evolve?
To be honest, it was also because I needed to show Paris and opera at that moment, and it was the only way to show the opera this way, because the opera is right now under.
It's in construction.
Ouais. So it was the only small frame where you could see a nice opera.
And when you're doing the speed of doing this, how many takes might you do with a scene?
It really depends. I mean, I try to be quick again. So let's say 4 or 5 takes. But sometimes you can go until 20 takes if you need it.
For you, what was the most fun on this so far?
I think the funny, the coolest part was to work with these very young actors who were discovering also the work on a series show. All the dancers, I mean, because they were very happy to be on a. I mean, the dancer, and they never played sometimes before, so. I like to be with them at that moment.
Speaking of the dancing, near the end of this where the young man and the girl are dancing together in the club, and she has her eyes closed, and then she opens it and she recognizes it, and then there's that smile between the two of them. How did that happen? Did you tell them in front, this is the way I want this scene to evolve, or do you remember?
Yeah. I remember because, in fact, they're not playing together. I mean, we couldn't put the 2 cameras at the same time. So she was playing what she's playing, and he was also seduced and smiling. But in fact, he was. She was very close to the camera, of course, trying to smile to him. And but I knew that it was an important scene because it's one of the main story of the show, to have these 2 people who are a waitress and a dancer meeting during this season. Yeah.
And so, did you talk to her while she was dancing?
No, I don't like to talk while people are working and playing.
By the way, you know one of your favorite directors, Bob Fosse.
Yeah, I know. But I'm not like him.
And what happens to you during sort of the end of a day if you do French hours, meaning that there's no lunch break? Is that correct?
There's a lunch break. There's a lunch break, and So you mean, for example, when we were finishing at 4, because then, okay.
And where's your energy? Are you preparing for the
Yeah,
next
we're
day?
really preparing the next day. Yeah, I mean, c'est quand même un marathon enfin, lorsqu'on se lance dans une série pareille, surtout quand on réalise les 6 épisodes, on est totalement dédié à ça pendant toute la période du tournage. C'est-à-dire que le soir, c'est préparer le lendemain et le matin, c'est préparer la journée encore. Et enfin, il n'y a pas en tout cas un moment de break ou de pause, quoi. Enfin, mais ce qui est très excitant aussi. Hein.
So it's really a marathon shooting a series like that, right? Because you're always already working on the next day. You finish shooting, then you plan the shoot for the next day. The morning of the shoot, you're preparing the shot list for the day. So you keep going, especially if you have 6 or 8 episodes. So there's no real break, but that also makes it super exciting.
Are you also looking at dailies during the day from the material that you shot the day before? And are you working with your editor on the same process as you're shooting?
Yeah, I mean, I'm watching the what we did just to give her some tips. I mean, and then she's working on her side, and sometimes on the weekend, and we meet and I watch. It was useful to watch some scenes I made. Just to be more precise then with some characters, to see how they look, are they nice or kind. Especially with Gaspard, it was important because he's supposed to play a boss, to be funny at the same time, to be not so appreciated by his team. And I really needed to see how he would appear in the first episodes.
Now, since you wrote these characters and then cast them and then shooting them, there's an evolutionary nature to this stuff. Where do you stand? Do you want to keep them where you conceived them initially, or are you going with the changes that they're offering? How do you deal with this? Because you started, they're your characters.
Yeah, and I wrote this series with 2 great screenwriters, Edgard and Jérôme, and well, we were very precise when we wrote the 6 episodes, but sometimes we were very surprised by what some actors can propose, and it's beautiful. It can be very nice to see that we were not expecting this, and it's more interesting. So I'm very okay when it seems even better than what we were imagining.
My last question, because we're supposed to wrap, is when you look at your own material and you're this close, how do you feel?
Well, no, I'm happy that we get to this. I mean, to have, for example, the screening and to make it concrete. But I'm not trying to say that we can always do better. And I assume totally what we did. I mean, then it's always new ideas for the season 2, for example, when you watch the first one.
Got it. Well, we look forward to getting to see the rest of this season and season 2. Thanks you for bringing this film.